Sarah Chaudhry doesn't get nervous. Excited, yes, she says, but not nervous. Not when you've been acting since the age of 6. Nervous, that's for rookies. Except
I'm a tiny little bit nervous today because I have to give a little speech in front of all the Canadian Oscar nominees, so that's a little nerve-wracking.
But at that morning's Los Angeles luncheon, the 13-year-old from Toronto will likely be received as a peer.
Market sellers won't, but it's serving you.
Chaudhry stars as the voice of Parvana, the main character in the Oscar-nominated animated feature film The Breadwinner, a Canadian co-production based on a Canadian novel about an 11-year-old girl living under Taliban rule in Afghanistan.
Angelina.
This Oscar season, while her friends were hanging at the mall, she was posing with the film's producer Angelina Jolie. But it's a sad indictment of show business that this teen has already learned one of Hollywood's brutal truths. Some men can be creeps. She's already encountered, in her words, a couple of shady situations that she didn't want to talk about. Luckily, Mom and Dad were never far away.
They definitely keep me safe from anything that may happen in the industry.
But they won't be chaperoning her forever.
The bride's my sister.
Oh, your little sister's getting married.
Yeah.
Canadian Renee Percy has been acting since she debuted on Degrassi High almost 30 years ago now. She says she's been harassed too many times to count, once allegedly by a director who's now been accused by dozens of other women. Whenever she complained, Percy says, it was swept under the rug.
It's as if it's, you know, a character trait, or he was born with this extra sexual harassment limb that, you know, he can't control it.
Who's this a funeral for? Men.
So she channeled her pain.
Damn it! One of them got out! Get him!
But she's considering giving the male gender a reprieve. Since the Me Too and Time's Up movements began, she says, the culture on set has shifted.
People are less tolerant of it. And I have a friend that was on set recently, and she said, you know, there was a guy on set that was completely inappropriate, and people said something, and he was fired.
This is one reason why. I'm standing right in front of the massive headquarters of the union, which represents more than 160,000 entertainment industry professionals. Right now in this building, somewhere up there, hundreds of senior guild members are taking a workshop on preventing sexual harassment. Earlier this month, the guild issued a code of conduct that covered sexual harassment and set up a hotline to report breaches. On a few recent red carpets in LA, I asked around, is it making a difference? Actress Yvette Nicole Brown says before it felt as though there was little anyone could do to stop a man engaging in what she called a reign of terror. Not anymore.
There's always been codes of conduct for different things. We're signing them now. You weren't always signing them.
Am I tall enough?
In her speech to the Canadian Oscar nominees, Chaudhry spoke about being thankful for being Canadian.
I could have been just like Parvana.
But she's just as thankful for the brave, outspoken women who no longer accept that their auditions should hinge on their craft and their ability to keep quiet.
It would be a blessing if, when I'm older, we won't have to talk about these things anymore.
Yeah. Kim Brunhuber, CBC News, Los Angeles.
Today on Hollywood Boulevard, near the venue for Sunday's Oscar ceremonies, a life-size statue had people looking twice and maybe thinking twice, too. It depicts disgraced mogul Harvey Weinstein in golden skin tones and flowing silk pajamas, one hand gripping an Oscar while the other seems sort of poised for action on the casting couch.
It's very in your face. It's not like an abstract, like hidden message.
People passing by stop for photos, but this is guerrilla art by two underground creators. With no permit, they had to hide Weinstein away. A neat bit of art, definitely imitating life. Weinstein has all but vanished from public view since he cast a long shadow, though, on this Hollywood ritual that's about to start this weekend. Joining me now to talk about this year's Oscar race, Adam Naiman. He is contributing editor for CinemaScope magazine and film critic for the Ringer.com in Toronto. And Jen Yamato is a film reporter with the LA Times, and she's in Los Angeles. Good to see you both.
Hi there.
We have to sort of start there, don't we? I mean, that golden casting couch is a good place to start, as is Harvey Weinstein. How is his downfall, the removal of him as a dominant force in Hollywood, how do you think that is going to impact the ceremony, the Oscars writ large? I'll start with you, Jen.
Well, I think that we have certainly this whole award season seen so much more transparency in the conversations that really began with the downfall of Harvey Weinstein. The Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement really came out of the exposure of the Weinstein scandals. So it's been something that Hollywood could not ignore all season long, which has been great. And I think we're going to see just more of that as the big night arrives finally.
And do you think, Adam, that because it's the Oscars and this is sort of, the pinnacle of everything, that it's going to be a little bit different, more subdued, more in your face? What are you expecting?
Well, that's the question, right? The dichotomy between subdued and in your face. Like, on the one hand, he might be a structuring absence because no one will mention him. And Oscar season's very much been made in his image for better and mostly hugely for worse in the last 20 years. Or is he going to be a target that people are going to go at either directly or implicitly? I mean, he's a figure that gives people something to rally against. He's a problem that gives people something to rally around. I mean, I remember thinking last year, wondering if it was going to be the most politicized Oscar ceremony of all time, and I think that this year might top it for that.
Yeah, and last year it was really about race and whether the Oscars were too white. And then there was that horrible moment, and I know you were there for that, Jenna. You can't even erase it from your memory when they announced La La Land, and it was actually Moonlight that won. How has that change things, or has it? Are we likely to see this year also reflected in a change in terms of how Hollywood has evolved, or was that sort of a one-off?
Well, first of all, that moment wasn't horrible. I thought it was amazing.
Well, it was good TV, but
people are still talking about it. It was great TV.
Yeah.
Great television. It was so dramatic to be in the room and so surreal to feel everybody go, what is happening?
Fair.
So it was really magical to be there. I can only hope that something half as exciting and unpredictable happens this year. But yes, you mentioned the conversation around race in Hollywood and in entertainment, which was started with a hashtag Oscars So White many years ago, a couple of years ago now, and I think it's still as present as ever. That solution that we have collectively been seeking and trying to push Hollywood to find has not arrived. You can see that reflected in this year's nominees, which are still kind of white.
Yeah.
And I think we're just at the beginning of feeling the progress that might come out of that.
Okay, well, when I get to your predictions, maybe you guys can weigh in on who might win. Okay, so Adam, what has struck you as sort of the biggest difference in the campaign this year? Are people sort of being open about the fact, Get Out, for instance, are they saying we are a black film with a great black actor and a great black director and we're proud of it, and so that's, how we're campaigning, or how is it different?
Well, I mean, one of the things I think is that whereas in the past you'd have a lot of discussion about the virtues of the movies, stacking them up against each other, a lot of the pre-award stuff seems to be about which films are most and least problematic.
Right.
I mean, it was interesting to see Martin McDonagh having to do damage control for 3 Billboards, which I think he did a really poor job of, where he said, I make films for grown-ups, which immediately cast any complaints about that movie in the realm of childishness. I mean, in terms of how the movies are owning that question of, are we a movie about this issue? Are we a black movie in the case of Get Out? I don't really see people speaking about the films that way. I mean, I think in the case of Get Out, one thing that I read that was interesting is some Academy members apparently don't want to watch it just because of a prejudice against genre or prejudice against horror movies. So, but I mean, Get Out is a movie where the tensions that you're alluding to and pointing to, they actually play out in the text of the movie. You're talking about La La Land and Moonlight last year. As unfair as it is to reduce that to a white movie and a black movie, it's interesting that Get Out comes out and then those tensions are put into play in a kind of coded, allegorized way within that movie. And a lot of people are suggesting that if there's going to be an upset, it's going to be in that movie's favor.
It's interesting that the story around 3 Billboards, because it's such a good movie, and then to have that sort of overtake the conversation around it, it's a little bit unfortunate in some ways.
Well, I think with 3 Billboards, it's interesting because the first wave of critics that saw the movie, especially at a festival like Toronto, where I'm based, think one thing about it. And then when you have people seeing it a little later on, they're not seeing a different movie, they're seeing the same movie, but the makeup of that critical community and group is somewhat different than the one on the ground in Toronto.
Fair. Okay, so let's get to the idea then of
Get Out.
Yeah, same with Get Out. That's a good point. So Jen, go from there, and also who you think should win Best Picture, given all the things we've been talking about, all this sort of political stuff going on around film right now.
Oh, it's so interesting because I'm one of those ones that find 3 Billboards problematic.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting to see the season go along with not just 1 or 2 frontrunners like last year battling it out. We have had several frontrunners come and go and rise and fall. We've had Shape of Water, 3 Billboards. There's been this late surge in Get Out support, even though, as Adam pointed out, some Oscar voters apparently don't even want to see it because they don't consider it a traditional Oscar movie. But we do actually have a more traditional Oscar movie that is also about race in Mudbound. That was certainly in the conversation. Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. I'm rooting for Get Out. Get Out is my pick. It's the one I want to see because I would like the Academy to be at a place where Get Out wins Best Picture.
Okay, Adam, I only have like 20 seconds. What do you think?
I really like Phantom Thread. I mean, I think that's a really insular movie, so I don't think it has a chance of winning this year, but that's a terrific film. And of the movies that have a chance to win, I would also like to see Get Out win, certainly versus the other movies that it's competing with.
I bet you the Academy members aren't watching it because they're scared, and I would agree with them. There are terrifying moments in that movie. All right, both of you, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You've made us think smartly about how the Oscars are going to unfold this weekend. Thanks.